Hello and welcome to Sales Results with Listening. I'm Deb Porter, and today I have my business partner, Linda Nielsen, helping me. Linda's dropped a PDF of the workbook in the chat for you in case you want to open it up and take notes. She's also going to make sure that you don't get stuck on one slide throughout the presentation today, which if it was just up to me to both talk and keep the slides moving would happen. So thank you, Linda, for helping me out today. And thank you for the opportunity to be able to share with you. Again, I'm Deb, and I help people discover the power of active listening in their personal and professional lives. While my master's program taught me to speak in front of people, I ever so much more prefer to listen. I find some irony in the fact that my business is all about listening, and yet here I am speaking. The universe does indeed have a sense of humor. I was never going to marry. I did. I was never going to have kids. I did. I was never going to own a business. You sense the theme. Somewhere along the line, I did learn to stop saying never. I learned about the law of attraction, and now I understand that you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. So now I focus on happy, positive things I want in my life. Italy, anyone? Achieving all the sales goals of the quarter and more? Yes, please. Yes. So we're here today to network and to workshop. And so I want to jump straight into the material that will help you see sales results with listening. It really is possible. I always try to start from where people are. And in a group, that's a bit harder, obviously, because I haven't had a chance to listen to you individually. So let's start here, something that most people would agree on. Businesses are built on relationships. The foundation of those relationships is communication. And the bedrock of communication is listening. It's extremely hard to build any relationship without listening. While that may have resonated with you, you may also be like me and really, really like to see the data. And so here it is. Again, if you are into the workbook, it says on page 3. And we've got some numbers there to help you get started. 62.4 billion with a B dollars per year. These are the dollars that GetNext says businesses are losing due to ineffective listening. That loss manifests in many different ways in businesses, including errors due to misunderstandings, customer service breakdowns due to poor listening skills, and other issues, including loss of sales. That's a lot of revenue that could be yours when you apply excellent listening skills. And did you know that good listeners are likely to make 42% more sales than their colleagues who are average or poor listeners? You may have heard me say before that only 2% of people have had any training in active listening. 2%, according to listen.org. Think about it. The sales professionals that are in that 2%, they are the ones taking home the 42% more. I want you to be the one taking home more. I want that for all of us. I had a conversation with one sales professional who told me that he had active listening training at the beginning of his career, but he didn't remember anything at all from it. For him, it was a hoop that he had to jump through, and he hadn't thought about it since. GetNext also found in their research that only 36% of salespeople are considered effective listeners. That still leaves an awful lot of people who are not considered effective listeners. When we think about this, the $62.4 billion loss begins to make sense. Here's one more. 94% of customers who reported low effort experiences said they would repurchase. I believe if you dig into exactly what customers meant when they said low effort experiences, you'll find over and over again, it means that they were heard. It's easy for them to get what they needed in every part of their buyer journey, low effort experience. One LinkedIn article notes that 69% of buyers surveyed say they want a sales professional to, quote, listen to their needs. Linda and I think the other 31% want it too. They just didn't think to say it. But here's the funny thing. 96% of people believe they are good listeners. Yet one study by Scientific America showed that even in a listening activity geared to make it easy to get the right answer, only 66% of women were able to answer the question correctly. And sorry, guys, men did worse at only 49%. This held true across age, across income, across educational level. Look, I am not here to tell you that you're not a good listener, nor am I here to tell you that you don't know anything about it. But what I am here to do is to help you get those sales results that you really want. And I know that listening is a very large part of your success. So, how do you become someone who really listens and gets those results? I teach the core of listening. This is the scaffolding, the structure that keeps the sales process you already know stick together. Here's a quick overview. The C stands for calm. Most people believe that listening begins with the other person, but it does not. It begins with you. Listening begins with you. In order to hear someone else is essential to be calm. That calm has to be established and maintained throughout the sales process. Do I mean a lack of energy? No, I don't. That's not it. Bring your energy, bring your positivity, bring your intention to focus. Stay grounded and centered in what you know. In order to really listen, it requires calm. I have a friend that works alongside Sherry Chase of Chase Realty. She said to me, Deb, Sherry is one of the highest earning real estate agents, and she does exactly what you teach with her clients. I've watched her. She makes sure that her clients feel her sense of calm. Outcome. So, what outcome are you hoping to get from your sales conversation? What outcome is your client hoping for? Do those match? This is especially important in sales. You're trying to sell to the next step, not necessarily all the way to the close of the deal, but to the next step. At the outset, you want to know what outcome it is and where you're trying to go. I'm in a beta group right now of salespeople who are practicing and having fun with their outcomes using gamification. It's role play, Dungeons and Dragons style. It's really fun. If you're interested in joining the group, hit me up afterwards and I'll connect you. Anyway, we were given 12 minutes in the group when I was there to make a sale. A sales professional in the other room objected, we can't make a sale in 12 minutes. What is this? If that's what you think the outcome will be, though, you won't. I'm happy to say I did. How did I do it? I applied exactly what I'm teaching here. I used active listening, and I especially leaned into the next part, which is relate. Relate is the doing part. It's the active part of active listening. It encompasses many different things, like the obvious, like eliminating distractions, to the subtle, like body language cues. One key aspect of relating in sales is finding the questions that give clarity between you and your client. Relating helps you understand their experiences and to see where your solution intersects. Asking the right questions and helping them know that you heard their answers is a very big piece for sales professionals to implement in every conversation for success. And finally, empathy. Empathy is the heart of active listening. When your client knows that their problems truly matter to you, that's empathy. And I was working at a funeral home. I took a lot of calls from what we called price shoppers. And even though our prices were not the lowest, I had an extremely high rate of success with them. Why? Because when I took the calls, I not only answered their price questions, but I empathized with what they were going through. It was after one of those particular calls that my colleague said to me, Deb, you could absolutely sell anything to anyone. This shocked me because I was not trying to sell a bridge in Brooklyn. And so I pushed a little bit and I asked him, what makes you say that? My colleague answered to me, it's because you listen. When I reflected even more on what my colleague said, it's not only that I listen, it's that I care about your experience. That matters. That matters especially in sales. It has to be genuine. Don't try and BS your way through it. Don't pretend to care. People pick up on that a mile away like a manure spreader out in the Midwest. Really, don't do that. So here's a few things that I know about learning to listen. It does not take a long time to learn what I do. It helps to have this framework of the core and some other things to really understand. It's essential to use intention, and it's immensely beneficial to practice. And when you do all that, it creates amazing results. How do I know that it creates amazing results? I've seen it repeatedly. I taught Jennifer the basics of core in an evening. She's one of the first people that I mentored one-to-one. She was complaining to me about her sales job. Jennifer works in a very large medical sales company, and she takes inbound sales calls. She had a quota to meet, and her clients over and over and over were wanting to talk at the beginning of the call. And Jennifer was stressed and frustrated because she wanted to make that sale. She wanted to get to what they needed. Jennifer ranted to me about this behavior of her clients for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I listened, I validated. And when she had finally spun down, I asked her if she was open to a suggestion. Here's a gold nugget if you can hear me today. People have got to be ready. They need to have an open mind and to be calm before they can hear a suggestion, before they can take anything in of what you're offering. I almost always ask, would you be open to some ideas about that? Or did you just need me to hold space with you? So often we rush in to fix a problem. This is the number one listening mistake. If you learn to avoid it, you will undoubtedly level up any relationship, sales or otherwise. I quickly taught Jennifer how she could use active listening techniques, especially applying the aspects of relate and empathy in what she was doing in her calls to move that conversation on more quickly. She was skeptical at first. She wasn't sure that encouraging people to spend time talking was going to get her to the sale. She wasn't sure it would actually work. But nevertheless, she trusted me enough to decide to try it. And so she did. And she had wildly successful results. She was asked repeatedly for her direct sales line. She exceeded her quotas, and she made it through her calls faster, as I told her she would. It wasn't long before she was offered a promotion. You can see how she became both part of the 42% who take home more and the 94% who have repeat customers because she made it easy for them, resulting in it being easier for her to make her quotas. I met with her recently to follow up, and she said it's been 2 years since she had to escalate any call to a supervisor. 2 years. That was about when our evening conversation was. And I'm so happy that she applied active listening in her calls. So, well, that's great for Jennifer. She was inbound sales, but what about you? I'm guessing that most of you here today, I'm guessing that you're doing your own lead gen. I'm guessing that you're moving people all the way through the sales process. That's okay. Everything I teach still applies. You can use this superpower too. If you're interested in learning how, I do have an online course available, Listen Your Way to Increase Sales. Linda's going to drop the link to the course in the chat if you're interested. Please note, if you happen to lead a team, I'm happy to have a conversation as I do discounts for teams as well. You can do more right now to improve your sales. And one of the best ways is to improve your listening one of the best ways to do that is to look back on sales conversations you had. And so we're going to do some work right now. And let's dig in and really workshop this a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to participate. I'd like you to think about a conversation that you've had with a client and think through your sales process and think about an example that didn't go exactly as you'd hoped it did. And see if you can identify, we're going to take just a moment here, see if you can identify at least 2 elements of the core, remembering as on the slide it says calm, outcome, relate, and empathy. That's what that stands for. 2 elements of the core, and explain how they may have contributed to that scenario, and write something that you feel you might have been able to do better. So we're going to take just a moment to reflect. We're going to just be comfortable and relax into the silence as sales professionals. Hopefully you know how to do that. And then we're going to come together after one moment, and we'll move into processing this and more Q&A.
Well, I can do one. We sell ESOPs, which is a complicated business succession plan in which you sell to your employees through a trust. So a lot of times when I'm talking, there's one client in particular that kept trying to tell me how it would work and what things would happen and how it should be designed. And I think it would have been calm is always good. I'm going to stick to that one first. But I think the empathy piece, instead of trying to correct or provide information, it should have been, why does he feel the need to do this?
Yeah, leaning into that in that example would have been exactly what you wanted to do to move that along. 100%. I'm so glad you had that insight. That's fantastic. Yes, yes, yes. Someone else? Go ahead, Tim.
I work, some of my HR consulting work is with municipalities in New Jersey. And I met with one and they were angry. Things weren't done. People had not received a promised promotion. They were in the wrong title. It went on and on. And I listened calmly. And after it was a room, so we were around a round table. And after
Mm.
everyone vented, I asked, how could I help? How can I help solve the problem? And I did receive the contract. But you're
Fantastic.
right. The important thing was remaining calm because they were very upset.
Yep. Yeah. The reason, do you all understand the reason why that calm is important? I go into this a lot more into the course, but it has actually to do with how our brains work. And when we're upset or angry, we lose access to our prefrontal cortex, which is the highest part of our brain activity. And when we're angry, we're stuck down in the amygdala. We don't have access. When we're stuck there, we can't access that prefrontal cortex, the higher part of our brain function. And so that's why it's necessary to remain calm, and because otherwise communication literally cannot happen. Our brains can't process. So yeah.
I'll just share a trap that I sometimes run into, which Michael made me think of with this example, is when sometimes trying to convince, like I see that they're going down the wrong path and put too much energy into trying to convince them why it's the wrong path, which really doesn't build the relation. And usually, it's usually someone who I'm saying, look, I'm just going to give them some advice. This is not going to be the right client for me, um, but I waste a lot of time and energy trying to convince instead of just asking questions in those cases.
Yeah, the questions can really be your friend. They're really, really powerful to get people back onto the track to communicate really well and to make sure your message is going through. Yeah, really good. You all like to listen too.
Sometimes relating, when you don't really, when you really disagree with a person's position, sometimes the relating can be hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I go into this a lot in the course too. This is a place where it's really important to understand that both things can be true. The person that you're talking to, their experience and their reality is never wrong. None of us are ever wrong. We might see it differently from our point of view, but this is true and this is true. And really learning that is extremely powerful. Yeah. Sometimes I get pushed back when I say that. So if y'all want to go there with me, I'm ready to go there.
That also ties into empathy. I just thought I'd mention that. And sometimes it can be very hard to have empathy with somebody who has a position, as you said, John, so different from your own.
And especially if they're like trying, in effect, beating you up for what you're saying. I remember way back, I used to have a routine that I'd go through with prospects, asking them certain questions, and this one person like challenged me partway through. I know what you're doing. You're just trying to stir up my pain and sell me what you're doing. And I said, well, honestly, sure, I'd love you to decide to work with me if you want to, but I'm really interested. I'm really curious about where you are. He's like, oh, okay. And he answered the questions, and actually at the end of the call, he did sign up, even though he was calling me on the fact that I might be trying to sell him something.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That means that you were doing exactly what I'm teaching here. You were making sure that you were paying attention to what he was feeling and what he was doing. That was a great job. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's hard for me to relate this to my business dealings, but I can definitely relate it to my personal and family dealings. So, and like when you say hearing out life drama, that almost connotes personal stuff, because I don't know about everyone else. I would assume a lot of people are in this boat where there's family members you're dealing with all the time, and you can't just say, no, you're not going to be my client. You're with them. You can't write them off, and there's drama, and it's hard to relate and have empathy and all these things that you're talking about. So I'm thinking around that aspect of it.
Yeah, of course. When Linda and I started the business, that was the B2C component was the piece that we were thinking of. And then we began to realize that there's the whole business side began to develop as well, because we understand that most people spend most of their day in business. And so being able to apply these skills in the business world makes a huge difference. So hence the whole concept of whole business solutions. So yeah, it's both and for sure.
Do you think it's possible, Deb, to have too much empathy or relate too much to a client?
I don't believe it is. No, I feel like, certainly there are times to set appropriate boundaries. Yes, but can we have too much compassion or too much care for another individual? No, I don't believe that's possible. I believe that we can overstep for where we are and what we can feel like we can really offer. I mean, if you're going to walk away and spend, the next day or 2 days or week thinking about this person and, oh, did I help them enough? Then that's not healthy for you, right? Then you want to make sure that you set an appropriate boundary. But um, if we go back to the example that you gave at the beginning, Cindy, where these people are angry and you took the time around the table to listen and empathize and say, I hear you, I want to help you, that how could, there's not too much. But no, I would argue no, there's not.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Sometimes more so before I started my own business, I would be accused by managers of being too empathetic with my client and too strong of an advocate for the client or the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to think, has it occurred since I started my own business? And I don't think so. But I still don't know. And I'm going to have to give some thought why managers kept pushing back on me if they felt I was displaying too much empathy.
Yeah, that's curious. From their perspective, did they perhaps feel that you were giving too much? I mean, their manager's probably always going to be concerned about the bottom line, and so, maybe giving if there was a giving more, and there's maybe going beyond a boundary that the management has set, that would be different, right? But just in terms of being empathetic towards another, it's just like I explained in the Jennifer story. When we actually give empathy, we actually move through the calls faster. It goes so much more quickly because people feel heard, seen, and they know they matter. And so as soon as that validation happens, we move on, they move on, and then it goes faster than what we think it will. Sometimes managers don't understand that. They think, oh, you spent all that time on that call with the person, but in fact, you spent less time on the call with the person because you actually did what they needed and were able to move on. Yeah.
What the trap, to Cindy's point, the trap I could see possibly, it's not that you have too much empathy, it's kind of what you do with it that you can kind of start to turn the conversation about you as opposed to about them, because you're trying so much to relate to the other person. And so you kind of like you overshare yourself and make it the focus be on you instead of them.
Yeah. That's one of the pitfalls that I cover in the course. That's absolutely one of those big listening pitfalls that people fall into. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
little different for me. They thought I was too strong of an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, right is right and wrong is wrong has always been. And if there's a better way to do it, then that's the way we're going to do it. And I'll take their suggestion. But it was more, this is the way we've always done it, and we don't need to change.
So common.
Right.
I'm curious, Deb, to hear your thoughts about how people can balance the core values. Listening to Cindy's comments about being perhaps too empathetic or too much of an advocate, it makes me wonder if it's possible to be so empathetic to another that you start to lose a little empathy for yourself in a sense of stretching yourself too thin or not holding certain boundaries, or perhaps being too calm to the point where someone doesn't think you are interested or care? What do you think about how to keep these values in balance?
Okay, so there's several things in there. I want to
Yes.
address the last thing you said about the calm. So I'm too calm, the person doesn't think I care. If you're staying calm and you're actually doing the relate aspect, so you're reflecting back to them. I heard that you said this. Is this what you mean? I hear that you feel this. Is this right? So you're getting that validation. You're giving that validation. You're helping them know that you understand what they feel. It's unlikely then that anger is going to continue to flare at you because they know that you get it, right? That's what all of us want. People want to know. We all want to know you get me. And so that's the first piece. In terms of too much empathy, is sharing too much, not setting that boundary. That requires self-awareness. That requires you knowing how much you have to give. And this is why you'll have more if you go into the conversation calm. And I'm happy to share this example. It's in the Deeper Connections course that we have, that's written more to the B2C component. But I talk about in that course, my son told me he was going into the military. And I'm really good. I'm an expert at listening. But when he told me that, I was not able to stay focused with him. I lost my calm, and I knew I lost my calm. And so I paused the conversation and I said, look, I'm aware that right now I am not in a place where I can really hear you. And so I would like to circle back with you and have the rest of this conversation at another time. Because my son and I, he's been in my home. We've been practicing this since he was little. He understood right away. And, he was amenable to that. Because he knew we weren't going to get anywhere if we kept going. It was only going to get worse, right? That's what happens. People push on, not understanding that if you just pause the conversation and decide to come back to it, this can happen in business too. I mean, especially in those upper level management conversations where it gets heated in a boardroom, for example, just taking a moment to say, okay, let's slow down a minute and everybody take a breath and reestablish that calm, whether it's 5 minutes, a bathroom break, a short, walk outside, come back, however long it takes. For me, for that particular one, I needed a day or two. I forget how long it was, but I know it was more than an overnight. I needed to really sit with that and think about how important it was for me to feel his own happiness and to know what to be able to have pursue what he wanted in his life. And that's ultimately what I've always wanted for him. And so, yeah. But anyway, that piece of knowing ourselves well enough to set that boundary and reestablish that. Does that get to the heart of your question, Jess, or was that a tangent that you didn't need?
No, it was an appreciated tangent. No, that's a really great explanation. Self-awareness is definitely so important. Thank you.
I want to add to that, if I might, that outcome. Keeping outcome in your head is a way to make those decisions not to go down particular alleys, which may be empathetic or otherwise, but aren't the solution that either one of the participants are looking for.
Yeah, really good.
And I think what you said about, like reflecting back what the person's saying is so important because, I had a client once who, she was having trouble with her boss because her boss didn't think she was taking problems seriously enough. And she took them really seriously, but it was her style. It was that she didn't tend to react. And I said, okay, that's okay. You don't need to jump up on the table. You need to say the words so that he hears that you consider it very seriously. And as soon as she started doing that, it changed everything.
Yep. Yep. It's powerful stuff. It really does change everything. That's what I love so much about listening. People underestimate the power of it, but it's powerful. When you do it well, when you actually implement it, it changes everything. Exactly that. Yeah.
And I think to John's point, you do have to know your listener because some people are more comfortable hearing certain words or seeing certain actions where other people that may turn them off and they may feel that you're being too aggressive. So you do have to know your audience.
Oh, and some words are real triggers for people, and you don't even realize it because you've never experienced someone getting triggered by that word before.
True.
Is it Georgian? Is that how you say your name? Did you have a comment?
Georgine, yeah, I was gonna talk to,
Georgine.
I have clients that I went through mergers with who intentionally brought in a younger CEO as a merged client to take over the business, but then fast forward to them doing the earn out and being now not only the 51% or greater owner, but the actual financial owner. The exiting more mature partners don't want to go, but it was their plan and they requested them to come in. And so back to Michael's comment, focusing on what the end game was, that it really was for them to exit. But there was lots of emotion, and John, to your point, lots of triggers like that you didn't even know because they didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, had this great vision of keeping WBE or an MBE, because many of them are women, company going into the future, but they hadn't figured out where they were going to go or what they were going to do, or they didn't want to give up the pieces that they did, kind of thing. And so it's very emotional. It was very emotional. I spent a lot in 2023 with a couple of clients they were through the 3-year transition, and it was very emotional, and listening was really, really key, and staying calm and kind of taking those breaks.
We go to 10 o'clock to the top of the hour. Yes. Is there?
She's in another time zone, huh?
Yeah, we have until 1 o'clock, but really it's up to you as our leader, however long you would like your program to continue.
No, I'm happy to continue the conversation. I just want to make sure I was remembering the time and that I hadn't just gone 10 minutes past. My brain just did a thing. Sorry.
No, we're still within time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the core philosophy. I am going to try to implement it. I'm working with a potential client now, and I'm ready for her to move to the next step. But I have to understand and give some empathy that she has other things to do other than to agree to my contract.
Yeah, one of the pieces that the pitfall that I talk about in the course is rushing to the close. And it's another pitfall where we just try and get too quickly. We try and get to that end point because that's what our goal is. But if instead we trust that the outcome that we want, and the client probably really wants to, but they may need a little bit more time, if we're willing to really listen and we make sure that we're not wasting our time, right, with somebody who's just not willing to say no. So I find that when I give people the permission to say no, like, just be honest with me. Either way is okay. I'm okay either way. But let's honor both of our time and make sure that we're moving it all forward. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, early on, I had almost the reverse problem that I was so focused on giving tons of value in a session, and I was afraid to close. It's like I don't know I don't know what I'm going to do there. I'm going to wait until I hear the right words. And once I got past that, and actually a lot of it had to do with getting more empathetic. And once I got past the fear of that, I actually didn't. A colleague had said, "I'm challenging you to actually make your offer at the end of each one of these calls." Well, as soon as I got into that mindset, I actually didn't need to, because almost every time I'd get to a point where the prospect would say, "Okay, so what's the next step? How do we work together?" But it took changing my own mindset for that to happen.
I love that so much. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that matters. That matters. Yeah.
Yeah, John, I had the same thing happen. And we have a common friend, Pat Schaefer, and Pat was like, "You have to wrap it up. You have to," because she had come from consulting when I started out. And then I kind of learned that if I validate their feelings, they get there and I don't have to.
And it feels so good when it comes that way. It feels more organic. It doesn't feel like you're pushing.
Right.
Yeah, there's in my experience, when salespeople start to get pushy, that's when it doesn't work. Right? None of us like to be sold to. We don't want to be sales. What we're trying to do is really have a relationship. That's why I started with the relationship. This is what matters. This is what builds what what we all want. Right. And it's okay to not want the relationship with all of the people in the world. You have to, obviously, you want to find those right people. To Mark's point, I get to choose. It's my business. I get to choose who I want to work with. I think that's absolutely 100% true. Finding those people, working with those people, that's building the relationships with those. That's what we want to do. All right. Well, I'm sure that you all might like to have the extra 15 minutes in your day. So unless I'm happy to stay if there are any other questions or comments, but if not, I am super direct and straightforward. And so do connect with me on LinkedIn. Do connect with me. Send me an email if you'd like. info@hearingoutLifeDrama.com will always find me. And so thank you so much for being here today and offering me this opportunity. So thank you.
Deb, and before you wrap up, I'm just curious, are there, like buzzwords that you have as, entrances to some of the more difficult things that, if someone continues to kind of go and repeat the same thing over and over again, I heard you say X, we're going to work on that, and the next time happen, that, we're working to fix that. So I'm curious, like, just if in a conversation with someone, they continue to repeat the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. I've had that experience before. Like, are there buzzwords, it's kind of like lead-ins to say, like, I heard you say, like, just kind of thinking of that, in terms of lead-ins.
So what I would recommend, if you're having somebody that's saying the same thing over and over and over again, what they're really telling you is, you're not getting how I feel. And so instead of it's not just about the words, it's about the feeling. And so try to reflect back the feeling. And so if that was happening with someone I was working with, I would say, how's that make you feel right now? Is that, and then I would try and guess. I mean, I would take a hit at it, and I might not be wrong. That's why I would ask, is that right? And so I would try that. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I mean, in some business conversations, saying, how are you feeling? I don't really think that I would, in this one particular instance I'm thinking about, like, that wouldn't have landed well. What might have landed well was, I hear you're frustrated with this. And,
yes.
So I think, like, me sharing, like, I hear you are frustrated, like, as you're sharing, I'm taking a guess, but, when they're repeating that something's happening, they're frustrated by it, I'm saying, how are you feeling? They'll probably want to, like, come at me even stronger.
No, but that's just it. You just named the frustration. And so I hear you're feeling frustrated. That is exactly that. And so however, which way you do it, but if you're getting it repeatedly, you have to make sure that they're understanding that you understand that frustration.
Okay. I just didn't know if you had any other words other than, like, how are you feeling? Because I know in some business conversations, that's not a phrasing I could use.
Yeah. I also think that, inviting them into, much like Cindy did, asking them, how would you like to solve it? That changes their, puts them on a different foot, because suddenly now you're asking them to use a different part of their brain and actually think about a solution. I'm happy. And the way I would try that is, I'm happy to think about this with you. I'd like to find a solution. Are there ways that you've thought of that we might be able to approach this? Maybe you've already thought about it more than I have. And so just inviting that in, being really gentle with it all, and yet being forthright and clear, that's good.
I think that's a great invite, share that, invite them to be a part of the decision and creating empowerment versus, them wanting to just throw the stones. It's like, well, do you want to pick them up and build a wall? Or do you want to, remove the obstacles? So I think that's helpful for having them be a part of the conversation versus just wanting to throw the sticks and stones versus, like, moving them out of the way or, changing what they look like.
Well, and making sure that they understand that you're willing to participate in that,
Right.
but that you'd rather have that empowerment moving forward, that let's do this together. Let's figure this out and sort it out together. I think that's that builds relationship.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
I think getting to the feeling is very, very helpful. It's just kind of how you do it. I think even just observing, you seem very frustrated, can get, and not going further can elicit a lot more information versus, and if it's not frustration, because I'm not frustrated, what I am, I'm angry. I'm angry about this. And you get so much more information that way. So I think it's very powerful to bring it out. It's just kind of how you're going to do it. What's the observation or question that can do that comfortably?
Sure, Jan, are there any leading phrases that you've found helpful in some of your more difficult conversations, or Cindy?
I try not to use you. Try to keep it more on the focus, or can you explain the situation? Because I do get into a lot of situational where the perceptions, back to one of the things that Deb did say, people's perceptions are their reality. And so they're not going to come out of it just because you're coming at it from a different point. So I try and embrace that. And in some cases, it's like John said, it's the trigger that you don't even know is a trigger. It's, and it may not have something even to do with the business. Particularly, I work with a lot of family businesses. It may have something to do with the relationship between the partners, or whether they're married, not married, friends, siblings, family. There may be other issues that are working. So the listening is really, really key to find out, to get them to focus on what the true issue is.
I do have someone in my network that I recommend for some conflict management. If things get really, really difficult, she's fantastic. I don't particularly love to deal with conflict management, but she's really great at it. So if any of you need her name, reach out to me as well. I'm happy to pass that on.
How does she deal with the conflict management? Because actually one of my clients went to a marriage counselor who sometimes did business people.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if there was any conflict counselors that were just for business conflict.
That is exactly what she does. Yeah,
okay.
That is exactly what she does. Yeah, I'd be happy to refer you. Her approach is to do the listening. She makes sure that she works with one and then the other to make sure she understands both sides. And then she really is able to bring them together, and she works within that framework. I think it's brilliant. She said, I asked her in our conversation, like, have you ever had it go sideways? And she's like, never in my 20, I can't remember if it was 20 or 25 years. She's like, I've never had it go sideways. I'm like, that's fantastic. That's super fantastic.
It's particularly for family related. And it doesn't have to be husband and wife. It can really be the sibling relationship of how things play out in family businesses.
Yeah, no, she does that. So let me know if you want her info just shoot me an email. I'm happy to introduce you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Deb, I really can't thank you enough for this session. What wonderful conversation we've had today. This has been such an interactive experience, and there's some compliments in the chat, and I know I also got a lot out of the session today, so we really appreciate you being here.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I'll make sure I save the chat then before you close the window. Or Linda, or can you wait, where are the 3 dots? Is it different here? There it is. Okay, got it.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.